So it's close to 3 o'clock. I've only been up for a few minutes. Suicide turned into a bit of a problem. I was expecting it to be a fairly quick render, but I can't get anything to null. Looking at the dates, that doesn't make any sense to me. I saved it 5 minutes before it outputted. So it seems obvious that I saved it and then I exported it. At the very most, I would have saved it, closed it, and then exported it. So I don't know what's going on with that. It seems to be something in the EQs that's acting on a harsher level than previously. I'm going to, I think I have a version of it put aside for the electronics project, and I'm going to see how that interacts. Either way, I mean, it almost seems like I modified it in a wave editor, and I know I had modified a few things in a wave editor. It's just, it doesn't, like, the time stamps don't allow that to make sense to me. And beyond that, I really can't. If there was something I did like the master or something, I would have, because I only had 5 minutes between, it would have had to have been pretty quick. So I'm more or less at a loss on that. Like I said, I'm going to go with the electronics one, but I mean, I guess that means that I've got 3 tracks left, and they're all messy, to put it that way. And I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm gonna skip the very last one to start off with. I know that one. Well, I think that one will null properly. We'll find out. But that's gonna leave me with those 3 tracks: Schizoid, Viewless, and Suicide. And there's no real reason I should go after one or the other. They're all gonna take a long time. So that's what I got left to do for the next few days. So it's a little after 8 o'clock. I've put the other 3 tracks aside and focused entirely on Permission. Everything nulls well, except there's a guitar part in the middle. And it's very easy to identify which guitar part it is. The problem is that it's playing 8 times in total. So I'm trying to determine, okay, which combination of those tracks is the ones that I want nulled. Well, you need to calculate 2 to the 8, which it would turn out would be 256. So I would need to check 256 possibilities. If I can find one that seems to actually reduce the sound substantially, great. Otherwise, I've got 256 possibilities to check. And it looks like that's what I'm going to be doing for these tracks for the next couple of days. Is there's no obvious way to figure this out as far as I'm concerned, but the timestamps make it impossible for anything else to have happened. I mean, for Suicide, the file is saved 4 minutes and 40 some seconds after the track is, and the track is 4 minutes and 27 seconds long or something. So meaning I would have had like 7 seconds to change something, and that's how much time it takes to go file, export, So I mean, it's pretty obvious that I saved the file and then I exported it, and there was nothing then in between, and the file has not been modified since. So I should be able to recreate that, and it's. I mean, this is a real problem. When I can demonstrate that I have not modified a file since I saved it, and I exported it within seconds of my last save, I should be able to reproduce that. This is telling me that I should not be using the EQs in Cubase. The equalizers in Cubase are obviously very unstable, or at least this old evaluation copy of SX3, which, I mean, it's over 10 years old, but I mean, it's, I should not be using the EQs on these. It's totally unstable. I mean, it sounds great for a bit, but you can't save it. If you try to reopen it, it's one of the things that I can try doing is try entering the information manually, and I mean, I've done that for a few and it's fine, but when I've got 8 tracks doubled, I need to be clear, like, it's 8 versions of the same thing with slightly different equalization settings. So um, that's not easy to reproduce, right? So when I say I've got 2 to the 8, that's not including manual entering, the possibility of the EQ being a little bit different if I had copied the file over, or etc., right? So this is going to be annoying for a few days. It's several of the tracks that are like this. Well, I need to finish these 2 first, because I know that the outputs on these are what I want, if I can find them. So that's Permission and Suicide. Like I said, I never finished Schizoid and Viewless. I know that I didn't get a clean save or a clean export. All I have is a flat version, so I'm going to have to reevaluate that one as well. But this is going to be some annoyance for a few days. There's no question. Right now I'm stopping to eat. I've still got some pizza left over from yesterday. I am known to eat an extra large pizza in one sitting from time to time, but usually it's 2 or even 3 days worth of food. So I'm gonna sit down and get something to eat. So it's around 2 a.m. and I'm closing Permission. I don't know how I created it. See, everything nulled except this little guitar segment in the middle, but there was 8 guitar parts, so it was, what the hell do I do? But for this, I don't know how those guitars came out the way they came out, but they weren't right. The version that I had saved sounds better, so I am just going to replace it with a new version. This track is not. I'm not that attached to this track. It was never released on a record. It's only on the Outtakes record. And it's because, I mean, even at the time I realized that this is very derivative. In fact, it's so derivative that I put a tongue-in-cheek guitar part in it. In terms of explaining what it was about, I think just pointing out that it was derivative is really enough. It's all there is to it. So I've actually attached this as a bonus track, a download-only bonus track. I may end up tacking it on at the end afterwards, because I'm going to reorganize some of the material, so there might be just that space, and it would, why not, kind of thing, right? Or if it ends up not the case, if I do need the extra space, then I'll just keep it as it is. So yeah, I'm gonna re-upload the version that I just outputted. It is the flat null, but it sounds fine. In fact, it sounds better. And I don't know what I did to create those guitars, but they didn't sound good anyways. I'm throwing myself back into Suicide now. The song, I'm getting. I mean, it's a lot of the same issues. There's 3 drum parts that are the same. There's 2 bass parts that are the same, and it's the same thing with Viewless. I mean, the complexity is a little less. So there's only 3 drum parts, so it won't be as absurd. And I'm gonna be able to play with it a little bit. I think what ended up happening was I ended up just creating a lot of the EQs by painting them in, and drawing them in will create a different output than typing them in or reloading them. Like I say, I'm pretty sure it's the floating point issue. So that if you put a point on a graph and it's like 0.537 or something, and that's just where you click on the graph, then it may record that, but it'll save it as 0.5. So you lose the 0.37. So it's like a round off floating point kind of thing. Trying to find the exact point that I drew in is probably very difficult, although I did get it fairly close, so I think that it might not be as impossible as the last one. Meaning I still think I can get this one. I'll have to figure out what to do if I can't. But I think a lot of it relies on getting the drums. If I can get the drums to flatten or to null, it'll really help me know what to do with the rest of it. Because I think there's a lot of bleed in it. And I think that what I'm hearing from the guitars isn't really the guitars, and et cetera, right? So I got to get the drums to flatten, and if I can do that, then I think I can get the rest of it. Yeah, so Permissions Closed, it was a throwaway track anyways. So it's about 4:30, and I'm closing Suicide. I couldn't get it to null, but I have a vague recollection of running it through a separate master equalization in frustration and then not saving it, if that sounds weird. The bottom line is I ran it through an AB, and I couldn't tell the difference between a null dump and or a flat dump and the version that I had. So I don't know how I got to that file, but I'm not going to freak out over it. It hasn't been uploaded anywhere, and I'm just going to go with the flat version. The track was sardonically approaching the issue of suicide. It always struck me as just stupid. It doesn't matter how bad things are. It's never getting better if you kill yourself. It just, the logic underlying it never asserted itself to me at any point. Which is sort of ironic because as I've grown older, I've started to see the logic in it. Because there is a point where you decide that while things are certainly not going to get better through suicide, the endless pointlessness of the reality we live in suggests that, or can suggest under certain circumstances, that there's no point. That doesn't mean that I really want to step away from this so much. As I would like to maybe add some subtle caveats. Broadly speaking, you would have to come to really stark terms with the pointlessness of the lives that we live, which I have actually. I went through a phase a few months ago where if I wasn't able to continue on my music production, the other option of things I could do with my life did not seem pointful. I saw no purpose. Getting a job at a McDonald's or something. I would just feel like I'm wasting my existence. Even that said, even when I put that in the context, having a few hours a week is better than nothing. And would I have pulled a trigger? I don't know. I'll say that I didn't really ever think I'd ever have to. I was using it more as a tactic to coerce doctors into doing what I wanted. You can put that little narcissistic cap on me if you'd like. That's actually what I was aiming for, and I didn't end up getting it. I got diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. I walked in there trying to get diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder by threatening to kill myself if I didn't get what I wanted. And it really threw the doctors in a loop because I was actually very forthright about what I was doing. I didn't try to, I didn't try to let them figure it out kind of thing. It was like, I told them flat out, this is what I'm doing. And there was no logical way out of it. They had to, either, if I go through enough suicide attempts, there's no solution but to deduce that I have a mental illness. So do you want to push me through this process? Do I have to actually do this, or can you just diagnose me with a mental illness before I go through these suicide attempts? And I say suicide attempts, every single one of these suicide attempts would have been in a controlled condition and it would have been easily prevented. And they would have had to, and if they didn't, I could have sued them. And I made all of these things clear right up front. Not with any intent of actually following through with any of it, but with the intent of projecting a narcissistic personality type. See, and my thinking was that whether I was genuine or not didn't matter, because the fact that I would go through the process of actually putting this down on the table in front of them and challenging them on it was enough to get that diagnosis anyways. And it's this recursive loop out. I think they made an error in not doing that. Like I say, they decided I had social anxiety instead. I think that's the wrong diagnosis, but I got what I needed, so I don't really care. But the point being that I did. I wasn't serious about it, but, well, I was serious about it, but only under the condition that life truly does become pointless. Living on those batteries, they don't tell you. But yeah, the logic only asserts itself if your life truly is pointless. I don't feel my life is pointless right now. I'm living on, I'm happy the way I am. That's doing the things that I'm doing. It was the threat of life becoming pointless. And had I been in a situation where I did feel that, I probably would have. So but to get to that point is really extreme, and maybe not even likely for most people. Even addressing the issue on a level of just pure logic, I still had difficulty actually getting to the point where I would have actually done it. So when I made this sort of argument sarcastically and haphazardly as I did, that this is a stupid thing to do, I can say I'm not really retreating from that so much as I'm adding some caveats. Another obvious caveat is if you're very sick. If you're terminal, you know that the only thing in front of you is pain, then what's the point? But that actually is logically equivalent to what I was suggesting with pointlessness of labor. It's just on a different concept of what suffering is. To me, a life full of, or where the only thing that exists in my life is labor that I consider to be useless, I would consider that equivalent to having a terminal illness, because there's nothing in front of you except suffering. And then what's the point? But to actually get to that point where you are convinced that there's nothing in front of you besides suffering, I still have a hard time. Even as I'm abstractly contemplating it and even preparing myself for it, it's still hard for me to see how it could really be that bad, kind of thing. It's just because to get to, it would have to be just total, utter hopelessness. And I just don't see where that applies outside of a terminal illness. Um, so I mean, as is the broad truth with a lot of this stuff, I didn't articulate it well, but I do think I was expressing something that I don't really want to retreat from entirely. Um, as was the case with a lot of this stuff, it kind of has a bit of a shock value to it. I'm describing various suicide scenarios in deadpan. Um, it gets kind of comic book graphic. Um, it's the perspective is one of sort of saying, you're you're a moron. Why would you do this? Um, and like I say, even though I can abstractly contemplate it, I still think that there's a it's to really get to that point. I can't